Hello and welcome everybody. This is the Fluffy Foxy for the channel The Creative Fox, and welcome to my second part of my most ambitious build ever. I'm continuing this restaurant build and I start building some internal walls, but I only use these walls as orientation on how to place the counters of the different shops. I needed to use some shop counters because we still don't have restaurants in game, so I placed them down and then used the walls that I set as guidelines for non-gridded parts I will set later. The non-gridded parts were a little bit weird. You will see soon that these non-gridded parts had a big problem, and this is that the texture of them isn't seamless, which I'm really puzzled about because I don't get how this happened. Why would you make a seamless texture on this kind of part? I'm really puzzled about that, and I don't know the answer to this. I just know that I had to hide the non-seamlessness of these textures with trim later, otherwise it would have been an eyesore. And this brings me to a discussion that was recently on the Bro Nation server, where I said something about mood. We all know that this game isn't finished. We all know that this game isn't as well thought through as Planet Coaster 1 after years of development, and we all know that it is even less thought through than Planet Zoo after so many years of development. But on the other hand, I don't want to be grumpy all the time. Real life, politics, social climate and all of that is harsh enough. So in the end, I want my Planet Coaster time to be a happy one. And I'm still having fun. And I don't want to mope all the time. So if I'm calling out Frontier for a mistake, I don't want to make you feel bad or make anybody feel bad. I just want the game to be a bit better. But in many social channels I'm in, the talk about Planet Coaster 2 is dominated by this is bad, or for example, I had this conversation where one member said, today I opened the game, played for a quarter hour and then switched it off again. And another person just said, starting the game was the mistake you made. And this is really, really sad. I love this game and I don't want to seem like I'm always complaining. I just think mistakes have to be called out, but on the other hand, something I like Planet Coaster for is the generally happy mood. Like the music is beautiful. The music always gets me smiling. The lighting is beautiful. The new path tools are beautiful. And as you see in my restaurant build here, the scaling is genius. The detail you can go into is extensive. I still love this game, and I just want to remind the community a bit that it's also hard to like the game if people in your surroundings always mope and act like starting the game is a mistake in the first place. It starts to sour the mood more than it needs to. Of course, mistakes have to be called out. Taking part in constructive discourse is a really good thing. That's why I did 2 giant forum posts in the Frontier forums to actually take part in the discussion. And I was quite glad in my first forum post that the senior community manager actually said, I'll make sure that this gets read. And I think Frontier is open to feedback. And I know that we have fears. My biggest fear is that the game isn't as successful as they hope for, and with that the support of this game will be shorter, and then we have half a finished game and not as much support as Planet Zoo has. Planet Zoo support is awesome and I love it for it, but I wish we get as much support as Planet Zoo has for Planet Coaster 2, because I want this game to stay for a long time and I want to have fun with it for a long time. I understand your fears, of course, but if we always talk negatively about something, these thoughts will actually anchor in our heads and then stay there and make our experience even worse, even with a game that is unfinished and that is not flawless. If you always point out how bad it is, you will see more how bad it is. This is called a self-fulfilling prophecy. And yeah, I think we should all try to stay positive, stay constructive, and not be that destructive and that mopey about the game that we spoil the fun people have with the game. I think this would be really sad. You see, I'm going into a lot of detail here. I decorate the window boards with lamps, with barrels, and some burlap sacks, and I used the moving statues and scaled them way down. And this is so genius. You can do smallest decorations with the scaling tool, and I love it. Especially in this build, where I put so much attention into detail. This was really, really great. After that, I do some of the window planters, and here I ran into a problem that is really interesting. Perhaps somebody can give me a hint about that. Sometimes the axes are just not where I want them. With these window planters, for example, the axes were 54 degrees to the side, and I really didn't want that. I wanted them to be straight, and I did snap the window planters to position, but somehow the axis went awry, and I don't know where I did something wrong. I want to use this video also to give a good shout out to Masked Bandit. He does a series at the moment which is called Beginner Heights, and this series is really genius. On his series, he also said that using blueprints for smaller items like interiors or clutter is fine, and this actually reflects what I think. I think using, for example, kitchen stuff that you got from the workshop is a good thing. Otherwise, this build would have been like 20 or 30 hours more even, and this is already over 10 hours of footage cut into 2 videos. I wanted to remove the windows here because they didn't fit the kitchen aesthetic, and I will put in an AC later to actually have some good air quality in the kitchen. But yes, I will use the kitchen stuff I already shouted out in my first episode, and then I will use some more sets of kitchen clutter and kitchen objects for this fully detailed kitchen area that I use for the kitchen downstairs. I really love how that turned out, and I'm really thankful for all these great creators on the workshop. That's why I try to make it my mission to shout them out when I use their stuff. I shouted out the creators of the kitchen props that I use here in my first episode, and I will shout out some of these now because I used stuff from the workshop. I used the set Kitchen Clutter by I Am Fortunate, the set Outdoor Barbecue Grill by Anna Darlins 1, the set Kitchen Objects by Dodo, and the Outdoor Barbecue Kitchen by CKM Car Designs. And especially the kitchen objects by Dodo were extremely detailed and helpful, but all the others were helpful as well. I don't just use a whole kitchen design by someone. I try to customize this stuff. I use a pen here, some pots there, some plates there to fill my existing kitchen and to customize it even more and make it more detailed. I really think it's genius how many cool thoughts people have when coming up with this stuff, with the smallest details of buildings, for example, this restaurant kitchen, and I am really happy that there are so many cool things to use and that I can be creative without being completely overwhelmed by having to build everything completely myself. I even stocked some of the shelves here, and it was quite fun to use different items. You have to keep in mind that compared to the other creators that are on YouTube, I am quite a beginner. And that's why I really love the Beginner Heights idea by Masked Bandit. There are so many tutorials for beginners, but they only cover the basic functions of the game. And the gap between beginner, intermediate, and pro builder is seldomly covered by guides. And I think the approach of Masked Bandit is really great there, because it's exactly what I need. How do you do the more realistic, how do you do the more advanced stuff, and how does he do it so I can actually progress with my creative work here. This is the kitchen objects by Dodo, and as you see, there are so many great elements there. Something like these ketchup and perhaps mayonnaise or mustard bottles, which I placed on the counters as well, because the counters could use some more details. I got some plates there, I got some salt and pepper shakers, I got some cans for example sprinkles for ice cream, which I could place. There is so much detail in this game, and you can lose yourself in creating the detail. I think you have the difficulty that sometimes you actually have to decide, okay, that's enough detail, because if you want to go into detail, there's almost always more you can do, and more and more and more, and you could build one restaurant for 60, 70 hours and still not be finished. I, for example, thought about putting some candles on the tables and even placing plates and dishes onto the tables, but this would have been a little bit too much. I used pots, I used plates, I used all of that, and then I started building a backstage area, because the restaurant should have a backstage area also. One problem I ran into actually was that I think the realism part of me always thinks about how to have a way to roll the dumpsters somewhere where they can put on the street so the dumpster truck can actually get them. So I think it's really important to think about this logistical details. And then I will create a gravel path down from the backstage area to the main park path, and then a small road from there to the outside street, and use the barriers to have people not going through. It should be connected, of course, with some kind of a gateway, which I'm building, and I still like to use the fence, but just build a metal framework around it and a round pole to make it clear that the stuff can be spun around, the door can be opened, and you can actually use this gateway, but it also fits with the existing fence. Something I do is that I use some metal beams, and then I find a metal beam that I use on the end of the gate, and I find that this metal beam actually fits the gate much better, and use it for all the gate. Don't be afraid to delete something if you find something better, or to even look for something better. You might always find something that is more fitting to your vision or to your creative ideas. But yeah, in this build I really had to fight my own perfectionism again and again and again, because there were always one more detail, oh no, I forgot this kind of detail, and I forgot that kind of detail. I forgot the gutters on the roof, so I had to put them there and record the overview and last passage from my video again. Oh no, I forgot the lamps. Oh no, I have to record again. It took me hours and hours to actually have the build like I wanted, but in the end, somehow I needed to find the point where I wanted to be done. I'm really happy with what I did here. I used some of the bushes, sank them into the ground, and then used some of the twigs to actually display something like the regrown bushes that got cut by the staff of the restaurant and now are there for biological waste to be recycled. And then I did a rock cover for the slope here. I wanted to build some kind of a bar in the second storage of the building, and I used the outdoor barbecue set for it. And then I started detailing the second floor with a railing around the stairs, and we don't want the peeps to fall down. And then I started detailing even more with doors to the restrooms. I decided to make one of the restrooms a changing room, which made this restaurant suddenly very, very popular, because the people flocked to the changing rooms as if they were crazy, because they want to use the water slides and the other changing rooms are always quite busy. So this is another cheat to make people go where you want them to go. Of course, you just build something that they need or want somewhere where you want them to be. The first thing I did was placing vending machines, but here I used the changing room. Of course, it's just a changing room in the engine. In my mind and storytelling, these are, of course, both bathrooms. Then I start doing some trim work, and this will be even done more extensively later, because I will think about the stability of the building and then use so much more of the wooden support beams to actually support the ceiling in the first floor and the big roof in the second floor, and give it a little bit more of a rustic look, because the building is around 40 years old at the time we are looking at the park. If the building is around 40 years old, people can ask me why I don't use decals, like the decals that give buildings a bit more of a worn look. And it's just a personal thing. I just don't like how extreme they are. Many of them are so extreme that they look like the building is completely run down, and they look more like intentional rundown theming than actually natural wear on the buildings. Of course, this is completely subjective, and I won't tell anybody to not use them. They're just not to my taste. I think they are too extreme. So in my mind, yes, the building is over 40 years old, but it got painted regularly and thus looks relatively clean and well kept. But I still wanted to have a good stability in the building, and of course on the stairs also, so I use some of the mythology marble columns to support the stairs, and then use more of the wood to support the ceiling and the roof. I cut out quite a bit of work I did, because I don't think it's interesting to see me placing hundreds and hundreds of wooden beams. So mostly I left in the start of what I was doing and then cut away when what I was doing was just more of the same that I did before. And I of course did some window planters on the first floor as well, and to change it up a bit I used different flowers, and in the end, and I'm so happy that it works now, I used barriers, because you might have noticed that people were walking through my wall instead of through the doors, which is fine. Many people want collision for the scenery pieces. I actually don't want it. I am all for determining myself when people can walk through something and when they can't. And with, for example, the advanced pathing tips from Tagi 3D and the now working barriers, you can actually decide if people are able to go through your walls or through your closed doors or not. Of course, there is a way to do that differently. You can just make a checkbox for every object where it says passable or impassable, because the scripts of that should actually exist already, because one of the biggest innovations of Planet Zoo was the collision and the traversable area of the animals. So it is possible to program some collision detection or traversable area, but I don't know how that will work with around 6,000 guests or so. Maybe it's too CPU intensive or something. I don't really know. What I know though, and what a transition this is, that this video is coming to an end. I am giving you an overview from the park entrance, how you walk to the restaurant, and I love the sightline it actually provides. When you come to that, you see it from a distance and you walk up to it through the lush planted areas, and of course you can see a bit of the backstage area, because also this restaurant isn't part of a theme park, or at least wasn't when it was built, and the theme park owners still don't know yet how to properly hide backstage areas. And then you walk up to the deck where you are greeted by the beautiful tables with the vases before walking into the restaurant and seeing all the nice furniture and all the nice design elements there. And you can choose if you want to sit on the first floor or on the second floor, and the waiters greet you with a nice little wave, and you can order your food, of course, from the table. This is not a QSR. The counters are just there because it's not possible otherwise, and then you can have a nice meal in a rustic and slightly luxurious atmosphere. And with the last images of the restaurant, I will do the game again. This time, if you're still here, please write in the comments, cats are awesome. I will be very happy to see many of the comments that say cats are awesome. And with that, I will leave you with what I always say: have a good day, a good evening, a good night, depending on when you watch this video. And I hope you stay creative and stay fluffy. Bye bye.